Alright, hello guys, how's it going? In today's video, we have two actual snowstorms to talk about. One that more minor East Coast one that could turn into something more major, but we are going to touch on that one. But I'm really wanting to start drawing my attention towards that central United States one that's a little bit more in the moderate range. We're going to start taking a look at that one. That one has a lot more potential to be a much more major winter storm and feature things like severe weather, freezing rain, heavy snowfall, and even maybe some flooding. So that one's going to be an all-around more impactful storm. So we're going to talk a lot about that one today, but also that East Coast snowstorm as well. But we're also going to take a look at the entire United States pattern also. Anyways, before I get into things, be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. For today's comment of the day, I want to know, do you think that storm over the central United States that we've been really tracking, and we're going to really take a deep dive into it today, do you think that will end up being one of the more major storms of the month, or maybe perhaps the biggest storm of the month? Or do you think there's more to come later in the month? Let me know in the comments down below, and I'll be picking one of those for tomorrow's video. Let's take a look at our current radar imagery here, and as you can see, we have kind of a lot of minor things going on. I guess the most major feature I can see is this clipper that is really starting to dive down here. Obviously, we'll take a zoomed in look at that. We also have some showers down here for a lot of the middle of the United States there. Some snow up there in Colorado, but mostly rainfall showers actually that we're taking a look at there. And then throughout the entire Northeast and Great Lakes and Ohio Valley and even in through the Mid-Atlantic, we just have a bunch of showers all over the place, so I think that's also worth noting. So we have three main areas that are dealing with some precipitation right now. And the first one I want to zoom into here is the north-central United States. Usually we move into the northwestern United States first off, but there's nothing going on there. So we got to zoom into here first. I guess this is the furthest northwest region that we're taking a look at here. And it's near Bismarck now, but we've had this clipper system really diving down. Probably a quite minor clipper system. It is thinner, so you're not getting as long of snowfall, and typically these storms are moving very quickly already as it is. I wouldn't be surprised if some areas are getting a dusting to maybe 1, maybe 2 inches maximum out of this event, especially in the heaviest bands, which seems to be kind of near Bismarck right now. So Bismarck, North Dakota might be the target region there for the most snowfall. Those blues are indicating extremely heavy snowfall. The bright whites are indicating fairly heavy snowfall. And then as you get darker into the grays, it says it gets lighter and lighter and lighter on the snowfall side of things. So we are watching this snowstorm for some potential accumulation. But a lot of that will have fallen by the time everybody's waking up. And it's mostly going to be in here by the time everybody's waking up. So be on the lookout for that. Let's see. Central United States, we do have some of these showers, mostly leading towards hardly any impacts. Denver might have had some snowfall overnight in that region, as you can see. And now we're seeing some of that here more towards southeastern Colorado. And then we have these rainfall showers here for Kansas, Oklahoma, and Texas. So it might sprinkle here and there during the morning commute. That was mostly over Kansas earlier in the morning. Now it's mostly over Oklahoma and maybe the panhandle of Texas later in the morning, but I think it's going to be mostly around Amarillo and Oklahoma City, probably during that morning commute. And depending on when you leave, it could be more towards southern Oklahoma and moving into northern Texas there throughout these portions as well. So it really just depends on what your schedule looks like. Let's take a look. We're going to have to split this up into different regions. First off, we'll take a look here at our kind of Great Lakes regions. And for the probably third day in a row, we do have snowfall around for these regions, especially the Upper Peninsula of Michigan. They've probably seen some accumulation over the past few days because it's just been snowing pretty persistently. But I'd say the area that I'm watching the most here is the northern tip there of the southern peninsula, and I think that's where the heaviest snowfall is falling at this point. Again, this is very lake enhanced, and I think definitely there could get 1 to 3 inches, maybe more out of this, depending on how long it's sticking around for your region. Also down here, more towards southwestern Michigan there, we do have some snowfall coming down also for that region. Let's see. And then for the northeast here, we'll take a look at this region. We have had some snowfall, rainfall, all sorts of stuff going on for this entire region here. Mostly snowfall here for kind of the Catskills up through the Green Mountains here. We've had more heavier pockets of that. And what's interesting is it's kind of extended into the White Mountains of New Hampshire now. So you see later in the frame, it's mostly up here in northern New Hampshire. So this is starting to move Further east, we do see that the Berkshire Mountains here in southern Vermont and through northern Massachusetts is now seeing some snowfall as well. It was kind of just hanging out there for a little bit, but now it's starting to really move, and I think that's going to slow down accumulation for the regions that it's moving into. But those areas that it was sticking around for, let's see, maybe 3 hours. I wouldn't be surprised if you were able to get half an inch to maybe an inch for a lot of those regions, maybe more, just depending on obviously where you're at specifically. But we've definitely had quite a bit of snowfall for some of these regions, and then quite a bit of rainfall here for more of these southern regions. And I forget if, yeah, so for West Virginia, we did have some showers here in the mountainous regions. Snowy at times, kind of slowed down earlier in the morning as we headed towards 3, 4, 5 a.m. It's kind of slowed down. There might be a sprinkle or a flake flying out of the sky there in eastern West Virginia, but really not much to write home about. So that's overall the current ongoing weather systems right now, obviously pretty minor. We are in a slower pattern like we mentioned. The next two big things is really that East Coast potential storm around the 13th, 14th time frame, and then the storm in the central United States a little bit after that one. So we're going to touch on all of those in just a moment. All right, so what we're going to do here is we're going to work through the European model, and then I have the GFS model and the Canadian model on standby as well, where we're going to take a look at those ones. The ongoing pattern, it's pretty cold right now, but the daytime temperatures are getting a little bit warmer here in the southeast. We talked about this, but we do have a trough there in the east, ridge there in the west, but the southeast ridge is trying to influence those daytime temperatures. Because you can see the flow is a little bit like this, so the closer to that east coast you get, the more warm it's going to be. Whereas more down towards kind of the more inland regions, we do see more of that cold air diving down. So here's a clipper system that rolls through 988. That's a pretty strong clipper there. We have some pretty moderate to heavy snowfall going on right here. So that's snowstorm number 1, although that one's pretty exclusive here for the upper Midwest. And then it moves up into Canada, mostly bringing rainfall here, as you can see, to the Ohio Valley and the Northeast. But really, fairly immediately, we see this piece of energy here. Just watch this, because this is going to dive down. So we're going to see it kind of start to move down into these regions. So we'll watch it play out. See how it dives down? That's kind of what's going to end up being that East Coast storm. So we see it move down first off around the 11th, 12th time frame. And then we see something brewing in here. Definitely something brewing in here. And then we're going to see it kind of, that energy flow head up the coast, rather far off the coast on this model, as you can see there. But some models have it a little bit closer. So we see that energy died down, kind of brews in there, and then heads up the coast. So something like that is what we're going to see happen with this storm. So we walk it through. Moves down into Texas and the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of that energy, and then around the morning hours of the 13th, that starts to head up the coast. But what's interesting is we're seeing a lot of different areas of energy. We already see snowfall around as this is just beginning to brew down here. And that's on the morning hours of Sunday, February 13th. And then we see it all come together a little bit later that night, where this area has kind of met up with what was already here in this area. So everything kind of combines and becomes a much bigger storm, but not too much bigger. So there's the storm on that model. Let's walk you through on this one. So we see the same thing. Again, we're going to see this energy up here, and that's going to dive down. And then we're going to see some energy develop in this region. We're going to see this really build in, and then it's all going to come together somewhere offshore of the East Coast. So let's watch it play out again on this model here. Dives down. We see the snowfall developing up there already. We see that energy brewing in the Gulf of Mexico, and then it all kind of just comes together, a piece of that energy. And on the GFS model, actually, if we zoom in here to the eastern United States, we will see that there is a lot more snowfall here involved. Definitely moderate to heavy snowfall for this entire region here. It kind of excludes these areas down here. It keeps it more onshore. So there's like a dry slot in between. You can see precipitation here. You can see precipitation here, but not in between. So that's kind of what we're dealing with here on the GFS model. That does eventually slide closer to the coast, but still we can see there is still a dry slot in there a little bit. So that would be, that's pretty much how that would go. That would be a pretty interesting scenario. Mostly here we can see central and western Virginia there, and then kind of up here in northwestern North Carolina, as well as the Smoky Mountains, seeing the most snowfall. Potentially 6 to 10 inches there in the purples, and then maybe 10 inches plus for the heart of it somewhere where we see that pink. So Definitely a more moderate to major snowstorm depending on where you're at. I think for Charlotte, North Carolina, an inch or two or three would be a major snowstorm. But here in, Charlottesville, Virginia, maybe, 10 inches would be more of a moderate snowstorm. Or, I think that is pretty major for those regions too. So it just really depends on where you're at. Okay, for instance, southern New Jersey, 2 inches isn't major. Although I know you guys will take it, but it isn't major for you guys. So it really depends on your location for sure. Now, I didn't show you guys the total snowfall here on the European model, but it is going to be much less, I will tell you. So we'll take a look at that. Well, that's not it. That's the old model run. So here we go. So yeah, generally 1 to 3 inches maybe. So like a dusting, if anything, and it's mostly there for Virginia. This model keeps it much further north there with the precipitation, so there is a big difference there. Now, Canadian model, same exact thing, except we get a much more minor solution, kind of like the European model. And what's interesting is it actually keeps it a lot warmer too. So we'll watch this play out, but mostly rainfall for these regions. Mixing issues, and then it keeps snowfall up here for the more inland and northern regions, which is a more traditional way of things to play out. So as you can see, it keeps the heaviest snowfall totals more inland and further north there. Some 2 to 6 inch amounts scattered in for some of these regions, but mostly 1 to 3, maybe a little bit more for most of those regions. So again, a much more minor snowstorm. So again, to reiterate, European model's a little bit further south like the GFS, but keeps much less snowfall. GFS is further south, but much more major, so it's the most major out of any of the models. And then the Canadian model is much more minor, sort of like the European model, but it's an outlier where it has that snowfall much further north than the rest of the models, and that's kind of where we're at with this one. All right. Now we're going to play this out, and we're going to take a look at that potential central United States storm. So we're going to see how this one starts. So we see this one actually is going to dive down and do something like this. We can see it up here around the 15th. And that's going to bring in a trough because we can see the jet stream is the opposite of this. We have a ridge in this region and we have a trough right here. So obviously that would not allow the storm to move that way. But we see this storm really dives down and then a trough enters into this region. So it all kind of just works out and fills in. We're seeing tons of snowfall in the better yet, the northwestern United States and the Rockies as that low pressure system really dives down. And then we see it come together and then head up mostly up through the upper Midwest and the Great Lakes. So again, without that drawing on screen, we see that energy move into the northwestern United States, dive down, bring snowfall to the Sierra Nevadas and the Rockies. So more of a western snowstorm that we haven't seen really since December mostly. Dives down and then it really develops over the south central United States, bringing snowfall here for the southern Rockies especially, but also a thin band here through the plains, through the upper Midwest, and through the Great Lakes. Would not be surprised with this because likely there's going to be a cold front somewhere in here, and then this is mostly a warm front. So we see the low here, and that's kind of the setup. That's the setup. So would not be surprised if there's very, very warm temperatures heading in behind that warm front, and then this cold front is coming in and just slashing those warm temperatures, and that's when we see a lot of severe weather. So we're going to take an interesting turn here, and we're going to take a look and see if there is any cape, because I am curious. And there definitely is. So those greens are indicating 1,000 plus mostly, but here I can see that there's a maximum of 1,800, so there will be sufficient cape throughout that event. As that warm front moves through, we can see that we do get that convective available potential energy, which is thunderstorm food. This is a sign of spring really trying to set in as these warm-ups become a little bit more potent, and then those cold fronts really come through and blast it and bring back the winter temperatures. That's kind of what you see in severe weather, outbreaks and stuff. Not saying that this one will be, but it is a sign that we are moving closer and closer towards spring to see these types of setups trending on the models. As far as snowfall, I do want to take a look at it for you guys real quick, and then we're going to take a look at some other models. But definitely, like I said, this one's going to be much more minor, as you can see. This snowstorm is going to bring widespread snowfall to the western. So we're talking Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, and then all of the Rockies as well. And then these plains regions just east of the Rockies, definitely seeing a ton of snowfall as well. Definitely many areas, obviously, or I guess I'll just walk through the color table. Gray is a dusting, if anything. Blues will be 2 to 6 inches of snowfall. Purples will be 6 to 10. And then pinks, we see a lot of those, 10 to 20 inches of snowfall. And then some of these areas, very small areas where you see it turns pastel, like in there. See some of it going on in here and here, or even a bigger area to indicate is up here in Canada. So those where it starts to turn pastels, that's where we're at 20 inches plus. So just to give you guys a little bit of a reference there. So mostly a 10 to 20 inch amount snowstorm for the bullseye regions, and there's plenty of them. This is going to be a difficult one for me to even touch on because all those mountaintops are getting a ton of snowfall. Lower elevation regions are getting a little bit less, except for in Kansas, Oklahoma, Panhandle of Texas there, and then the upper Midwest where we see a lot more coming down. All right, let's zoom out here on our GFS model. Let's take a look at the entire United States, not Europe, United States. And we're going to take a look at this snowstorm rolling through. So we see it starts, this one's a little interesting because what we see happen is it develops here and it moves straight down the coast and then moves up. Whereas I'll draw the European model on screen, but it comes a little bit more on shore for sure. And then I think it even goes a little bit more east like this as well. So the European model would look a little bit more like that blue. So we will compare though. So the GFS takes a little bit more like that yellow line, as you can see, and then moves up. Still brings a ton of snowfall, but it moves up more like that, more like the yellow line. And then when we move back through the European model, we will see that it probably follows that blue line, if I'm accurate with it. Yeah, maybe somewhere in between, but I feel like it does follow, or you know what, it does kind of follow the yellow line a little bit more than I anticipated. But I do still think on this western end, obviously the low pressure system's here. The GFS model was more like here, so there is a difference there, but I think on the eastern end, I over-exaggerated how much of a difference there is there. My apologies. We do see the same setup, though. Plenty of snowfall taking place throughout all of these regions, basically. You typically see snowfall, and then it's the same thing here. Except everything is a little bit more, I can't help but feel like everything is a little bit more east. It is lower resolution. Let me switch back to yellow. I think yellow is the best color here, honestly. So we do see this cold front here still. We still do see a rather large warm front there. So things are moving up like this. Warm temperatures. So you can expect warm temperatures out in front of this. And then the cold temperatures are really going to blast through behind this. And that's what would lead to potential severe weather for these regions. And I want to see if there's CAPE here too. So we're going to compare. We're going to see if the GFS model is on the same page. Okay, so a little bit less widespread with it, definitely. These greens, again, those greens are going to be 1,000 plus, which is what we consider sufficient for severe weather. We do get a little bit of this on the southern end, but the European model was like this entire region could see 1,000 plus, but the GFS model is much, much more reserved with those high CAPE amounts. What I also find interesting is that at certain points there's CAPE in all of these regions, basically, so I wouldn't be surprised if a lot of folks see their first thunderstorms of the year. You see those blues reaching up into Pennsylvania, Maryland, Virginia, North Carolina. That could spell your first thunderstorms during this event because there will be warmer temperatures around on that day, and then you see the cold front blast through. I would not be surprised to see a lot of folks see their first thunderstorms, which is really cool as long as it causes no damage. I do like thunderstorms. As long as it's definitely not dangerous. That's when it becomes not so fun. And then total snowfall here. We can see a little bit less here on the western end on the GFS, a little bit more here on this extent for the upper Midwest, the plains, the Great Lakes. So this is all going to be stuff that we need to walk through over time, and we're going to know more answers later on. But I just wanted to kind of address you guys that there is a much more major storm looming that we don't know the exact details on that will be bringing a lot of snowfall for the Rockies, Cascades, Sierra Nevadas, and then areas in the plains. There's going to be a thinner band there through the plains into the upper Midwest and Great Lakes. That could move south. That could move north. That could be more major. That could be less major. But we do know there will be a band of some sort that does bring snowfall for those regions. It's just where's it going to set up. So we don't know the exact details yet. I'm not insanely confident in that one yet. Same story with the East Coast one. There's a lot of details to work out. But hey, that's the fun in weather, right? That's why I make these videos, because we have to figure out the details. So I encourage you to subscribe and to join us daily as we walk through these storms over the coming days. I hope I touched on everything enough here for you guys and there isn't any details left out. But if there is details left out, we're going to be going over it tomorrow, of course. For today's confidence tab, we are at a 4 out of 6 still. I don't feel confident enough in either of these systems really to lower or increase the confidence. I feel like that's a good place to be. For today's comment of the day, better yet, I asked you guys, When do you think we will see an active pattern return? And Boris Best Plays said, I think we will see another active period for the winter in the next week or two. And I definitely agree, but I think after that point, it's more of a toss-up if we will enter a very active pattern, or if we'll go back to a quiet pattern like we've seen for the past few days, or maybe the past week or so. We're going to continue to see for the next couple of days until that Valentine's Day storm potentially hits. Anyway, good comment of the day there. For today's patron highlight of the day, I want to thank you all for supporting the channel, but especially our platinum patrons Bill Crates, James Wade, Dovin Nagel, Lou the Pan, Mandy Birchfield, Patrick Strickland, Dave Scott, and Donna Carnes as well. I would also like to thank our diamond patrons Bill Roberts, Marcus Connolly, No More Holy Mega Kundalasa Catbite, Charles Stinnett, Bill Dallas, Garys, and John Khaleesi also. I would also like to thank our channel members Catbite, Stephen Fan, and Jeremy Cox as well. Anyway guys, thank you so much for watching this video. Be sure to smash that like button, leave a comment down below, and subscribe for more weather-related content. I'll see you guys in the next video.